is Dr. Shmuel Shields, and we're continuing with our Guard Your Health series. Baruch Hashem, we've had some very nice feedback from the series, so we're hoping, in Mirz Hashem, to be able to continue with a first Wednesday of each month to continue with the series, Bli Neder. Today, we have a very interesting topic. We're going to talk about keeping the brain healthy. I think the official title was Dodging Dementia and taking steps to improve cognition, memory, brain health, and so on. And I wanted to set the stage for this talk by saying the following. We know that we have 6 constant mitzvahs. The mitzvah to believe in Hashem. There's a mitzvah not to believe in any other deity, to believe in Hashem's unity, His oneness, and also to love Hashem, to fear Hashem, and not to direct one's heart or eyes to immorality or to entertain any kind of apikorsis thoughts. So I want to focus on Yira, and I think David HaMelech in Sefer Tehillim says it best. He says that through my flesh I see my Creator. So this concept of Yira, fearing Hashem, we might be able to think of it in terms of being in awe of Hashem, His greatness, His wisdom, Maisa Bereshis, creating the world, creating human beings. And when we look at the human body, like David HaMelech tells us, through his flesh he was able to see his Creator. The miraculousness of the human body. I have a photo here from an Asher Yatzar shot, and we have different organs here. The eyes being the most miraculous camera in the world. Today we're going to talk about the brain, and we're going to talk about some of the functions of the brain. And when we think about the human brain, we should have a sense of yira, a sense of awe for the Creator. I've heard it said that it would take the computer space the size of 3 Empire State buildings to do what the human brain can do. The central nervous system, composed of the brain and the spinal cord, integrates information received from all parts of the body and coordinates all the body's activities. Just the process of learning itself involves numerous steps, including concentrating, processing information, storing and retaining that information, and then recalling it from memory. That kind of power needs a lot of fuel. And the brain depends on getting that fuel from the foods that we eat. I just want to let you know that a number of the patients I've worked with over the years as a nutritionist, they've told me the following. They're concerned about having difficulty concentrating, habitual forgetfulness, not being able to focus. These are very common things that you see in children and in adults as well. And many times people are fearful. Sometimes you're at a social event, somebody introduces you to somebody, and 2 minutes later you can't remember the name of the person. And I'm sure there are people listening right now that have gone into a room in their apartment or house, forgot what they went in for. And we start to get very fearful, and we think the worst. We think we're developing some form of dementia, Alzheimer's, and so on and so forth. Well, if you do have certain symptoms you're concerned about, it's always good to check with a healthcare professional to rule out certain things. But many times, it's not really deterioration of the brain or irreversible signs of aging, but sometimes it can be due to a poor diet. And we're going to give you some examples of that in a minute. Sometimes just by improving how we eat could affect the health of the brain. And there's a lot of research today and a lot of good studies that show with the right lifestyle, with the right eating habits and so on, we could reduce the risk of cognitive decline. And we can keep the brain healthy and active. And we could have better focus and hopefully better memory. So, getting back to that, I want to go through a few tips today on what we can do to keep the brain healthy. And I'm going to save the nutrition component for a little bit later. The first tip I want to talk about, and some of this information is from a book that I wrote called L'Chaim, 18 Chapters to Live By, and also from Dr. Andrew Weil, an article I saw where he talks about 10 tips for a better memory. So one of the first tips is to exercise your brain. To keep the brain healthy, just like you want to keep the body healthy, the brain has to be exercised also. How do we exercise the brain? A little bit different than the body. The body, we lift weights, we walk, we run, we jog. For the brain, it requires mental exercises that stimulate brain function. So, for example, crossword puzzles, word games, board games, learning a new skill or a new language. These are ways that we stimulate and keep the brain exercised. So these are very important things to do. Then we have also controlling underlying medical conditions, managing them to the best of our abilities. So if we have high blood pressure or an elevated cholesterol level or a triglyceride level, or if we're diabetic and we have to make sure that we're controlling cholesterol, blood sugar, blood pressure, because if these things are uncontrolled, it could affect circulation to the brain, it could damage capillaries and blood vessels that nourish the brain. So taking care of underlying medical conditions is crucial to a healthy brain. Checking your medications. There are a number of medications that could affect short-term memory. Short-term memory is usually what goes first. Our long-term memory stays intact a lot longer. So if you were prescribed a new medicine and you've noticed a decline in your short-term memory, I would bring it to the attention of your doctor or pharmacist and find out if that's one of the side effects of the medication. Exercising your body, in addition to being good for the heart and the cardiovascular system, is also good for the brain because you're increasing circulation. So you're bringing nutrients to the brain, you're removing toxins, and so on. Obviously, anything we could do to reduce our stress level. When we're under heightened stress for long periods of time, there's a hormone called cortisol, which is known as the stress hormone, that gets elevated in the blood. And that hormone could damage the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain that stores our memory. So we want to make sure that we take steps to reduce ongoing stressful situations and so on. Adequate sleep is critical to a healthy brain, being able to concentrate, being able to focus, being able to function properly. We know that if we go one night without sleeping or sleeping very poorly, the next day we're sluggish, hard to concentrate, hard to focus, more irritable, moody, and so on. So sleep is a critical component to keeping the brain working properly. And last but not least, many times when people forget a name that person they were just introduced to, oftentimes it's due to the fact that at the time of the introduction, they may not have been focused, they may not have been paying attention, they may have been looking somewhere else or distracted with a thought or whatever. And sometimes not paying attention is a cause for forgetfulness. For example, when somebody introduces you, you should concentrate and then say the name over again. Even out loud, nice to meet you, so-and-so. So you reinforce the message in the brain. Just like if let's say you're listening to a radio and there's a news flash, and at the same time you're washing the dishes. If you really want to remember and be able to focus on what's being said, what most people will do is they'll stop washing, they'll come over to the radio, they'll focus on it, and they'll be better able to remember just by paying better attention. Okay, so I want to come back now to the role that nutrition and foods play. Before I do that, one other point I want to make, which has been shown to reduce the risk of mental decline, cognitive decline, and even forms of dementia, is having a hobby and doing volunteer work. They found that people who are engaged in hobbies, have volunteer work, doing things that they enjoy doing every day, having some sort of relaxing activity, seems to be important for the health of the brain, and also being socially engaged, being in contact with other people is very important to the health of the brain and to reduce the risk of mental and cognitive decline. Okay, now let's talk about the role of foods and nutrition as it pertains to the health of the brain. Basically, in my book, L'chaim, 18 Chapters to Live By, the chapter I have on health of the brain, we have a sub-chapter there called Good Nutrition Equals Good Cognition. So, the brain, as I mentioned, depends on amino acids, fatty acids, a large array of vitamins and minerals that are necessary to produce the essential chemicals called neurotransmitters. There are 40 different chemicals in the brain that we call neurotransmitters that allow nerve cells to communicate with each other and allow the brain to function. To satisfy the brain's enormous need for these vital nutrients, the human heart sends 25% of the body's blood, oxygen, and glucose directly to the brain with each heartbeat. In fact, the brain has a higher concentration of nutrients than any other organ in the body. Even slight deficiencies in the B vitamins, B1, B2, B6, B12, folic acid, niacin, have been associated with memory loss, irritability, nervousness, fatigue, mental confusion, depression, and even emotional instability. Almost anybody that's been diagnosed with depression usually has a low B12 level. That doesn't mean B12 deficiency causes depression, but B12 and other B vitamins do play a very important role in cognitive functioning and memory and so on. So we want to make sure that we are well nourished. There's a typical example I give, and you may have heard it before, but I think it's important to repeat again. If anybody does any baking, and let's say you need a certain number of ingredients to bake a cake, and you fall short by one or two ingredients, chances are you can still have that cake, but the missing ingredient might compromise the quality of that cake. Whether it's the texture, the aroma, the taste, something is going to be missing when you eat that cake. And it's the same thing with the human brain. If we are missing certain nutrients, or we're depleted of nutrients, or we have deficiency, and those nutrients are necessary for building those neurotransmitters in the brain, and now they're not being built the way they need to be built, that could be problematic. So this is something that we have to pay attention to, knowing that we want to nourish the brain with all the nutrients that are necessary. And one of the best ways to do that is to make sure that we're eating properly. What affects the brain over time, certainly the aging process, and as we age, plaque buildup, cholesterol in the body, will interfere with circulation to the brain. We also have something called oxidative damage. Oxidative damage is basically damage that's caused by oxygen to the cells of the brain. And the brain is vulnerable because it's a big user of oxygen. So one of the ways to offset oxidative damage and to keep the brain healthy is to make sure that we have a diet that is rich in antioxidants, which I'd like to talk about right now. So antioxidants, what does it mean? Anti means against, and oxidant means oxygen, something that works against oxygen. Even though oxygen is a good thing and necessary for life, and all the cells in the body need it, it also has a downside. And the downside is oxygen molecules can damage things. For example, if you take a piece of iron that's not painted and you leave it outdoors, it's going to rust. That rust is an example of oxidative damage. If you cut open an apple and you leave it exposed to oxygen, the cells of that apple begin to get damaged by the oxygen and start to brown. So one of the ways to offset oxidative stress, oxidative damage to the cells of the body, and particularly to the brain, is to actually increase our intake of antioxidants. So what's an example? Vitamin C is a very powerful antioxidant. So if you want to try an experiment when you get home, cut open an apple, take some fresh lemon, squirt it over one half of the apple, and the other half just kind of leave alone. And come back maybe a half hour later, and you're going to be surprised to find that the apple that has the lemon juice on it, the fresh lemon on it, didn't change color and seems pretty much intact. And the other half of the apple is you're already starting to see the result of oxidative damage. So what is it about the side with the lemon juice? What it is, you have vitamin C in the lemon juice, and that powerful antioxidant vitamin C, which covered the cells of the apple, is now protecting it against oxygen. And it works pretty much the same way in our body. When we have these antioxidants, things like beta carotene, there are literally hundreds, maybe thousands of antioxidants. Some of the common ones, beta carotene, vitamin E, vitamin C, selenium. When you drink a cup of green tea, you get polyphenols. That's the plant chemical, the phytochemicals that are in the green tea leaf. That's a very powerful antioxidant, and that would protect the cells and the blood vessels as well. So by having a whole food meal plan that's rich in antioxidants, we get more protection against the damage that oxygen can cause to the brain. So if I had to show you a little picture here, you want to keep your meals colorful. You want to get foods that have a lot of color and allow you to get the various plant chemicals and antioxidants that are in these kind of foods. Here's sort of a sample one-day meal plan. Again, you see it is very colorful. It is made up of whole foods, no unprocessed foods. There is a cookie there and a cup of coffee just to make it look a little normal, but basically it's a whole food meal plan. And as you remember, for those of you that might have saw the presentation last week, we spoke about the Mediterranean diet, and we mentioned that the Mediterranean way of eating is one of the most well-researched ways of eating in the world. There's been decades of research behind it, and I spoke about some of the health benefits in the talk last week. But just to focus on one aspect of Mediterranean eating and how it pertains to the talk today, is that there is research that shows that someone who adheres to a Mediterranean way of eating may reduce the risk of Alzheimer's by 40%, which is no small thing. And again, why that might be, the researchers feel due to the food makeup, the healthy fats that nourish and feed the brain, the monounsaturated fats, the omega-3 oils that are part of this diet, the colorful fruits and vegetables loaded with things like, and the whole grains. So you have an array of B vitamins, you have a lot of the antioxidants we spoke about, and the healthy fats seem to play a protective role for the brain and for the blood vessels. So these are basically some of the important tips that I wanted to discuss with you today. Just an interesting note, in my book I have a list of foods that have some of the highest antioxidants, things like prunes, raisins, berries, plums, oranges, red grapes, and vegetables that are richest in antioxidants are things like kale, spinach, broccoli, beets, red bell peppers, just to name a few. But we can see there's a lot that goes into good brain health, and there's a lot of steps we can take lifestyle-wise, like we mentioned and spoke about. Another food that is very important is fish. Fish because of the omega-3 content. The brain is made up of a lot of fatty tissue, and that fat is actually omega-3. So when we're eating fish, we're actually nourishing the brain. So we can see there are a lot of things that we can do lifestyle-wise. Obviously, obesity puts us at risk for dementia as well. So anything we can do to promote a healthy lifestyle, and again, this is a Guard Your Health series. So we want to promote health. We want to promote healthy lifestyle, healthy eating, exercise, and a lot of the other things we mentioned over here could go a long way in helping us to have better focus, better attention, better concentration, hopefully better memory, and better cognitive functioning as we go forward. If anybody has any comments or questions they'd like to address to me personally, I can be reached at 718-544-4036. I'll give you an email address also. It's R as in Robert, M as in Michael, Shields, SHIELDS, rmshields62@gmail.com. Again, that's rmshields62@gmail.com. Okay, I hope you'll continue to join us in what will be hopefully monthly Wednesday, the first Wednesday of each month. We hope, God willing, to try to continue with this series. Everybody should have a healthy and safe summer. Thank you for joining us.